God wants to take, this is important, God wants to take your greatest pain and turn your mess into your life message. He wants to take your setbacks, your loss, and use it for someone else's gain. Obedience. I want you to look at this in Genesis chapter 3, verse 16. Then the Lord said to Eve, said to the woman, you will suffer terribly when you give birth. And the Lord said to the man, you listen to your wife. Men, would you like for me to expound on that for a little more? I'm not going to. And I don't think God said it like that. But Adam, you listened to Eve, and you ate the fruit from the tree, and so the ground will be under a curse because of what you did. And so God says, Adam, as long as you live, you will have to what? Struggle. You'll have to struggle. Life's a struggle. In life, we struggle with three things in particular. One, we struggle with other people. This morning we're going to look at the life of Jacob. Jacob struggled with, bless his heart. Jacob was one of those guys that could argue with a fence post. I mean, he was hard to get along with. And even before he was born, I love this. Even before he was born, he was fighting. You know this story? Look at Hosea 12, verse 3. Jacob struggled with his twin brother Esau while the two of them were still in their mother's womb. So we struggle with others, and then second, we struggle with ourselves. Your biggest problem is you, and my biggest problem is me. We struggle with, every one of us has a sin that tempts us the most. The Bible calls it the besetting sin. There are temptations that we struggle with every day. Then we struggle with personal issues. We struggle with the way we look. Well, most of us do. I wasn't so happy when I saw myself in the mirror this morning. Maybe you felt differently about yourself. Well, goody for you. But we struggle with our looks. We struggle with our flaws and our fears and our insecurities. And back to Jacob, most of Jacob's problems stem from his own insecurities. And because of his insecurities, I believe he acted out of fear. Paul says, what I don't understand about myself is that I decide one way, but then I act another. Doing things I absolutely despise. And the moment I decide to do good, sin is there to trip me up. I truly delight in God's commands, but it's pretty obvious that not all of me joins in that delight. Parts of me covertly rebel, and just when I least expect it, they take charge. I think every one of us can identify with that. We don't do what we want to do, and what we want to do, we don't. So we struggle with others, we struggle with ourselves, but the greatest struggle every one of us has is a struggle with God. This is an important note about part of who Jacob was. He was a runner. If he couldn't manipulate the people in the scenario, if he couldn't manipulate the situation, he would just turn his back and run away from it. And then God says to Jacob, Jacob, you really need to go back home. You really need to face this situation head on. He is wrestling with the divine. And then a man wrestled with Jacob until dawn, and when the man saw that he could not win against Jacob, in other words, this is just a no-win situation. And understand this, it wasn't that God couldn't whip Jacob. You know that, right? And when the man saw that he could not win against Jacob, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip. We'll come back to this later. He touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that it was dislocated as they wrestled. And then the man said, let me go, it's almost dawn. But Jacob answered, and I love this. Jacob said, I won't let you go until you bless me. And so the man asked him, what's your name? Strange question, isn't it? I mean, if this is God, doesn't God know his name? Strange question to ask a man in the middle of a wrestling match. What's your name? God wanted Jacob to come to terms with who he was. Character. And you know what Jacob's name meant? Deceiver. Manipulator. Runner. That's what Jacob's name meant. Let me pause and ask you a question. I had to ask myself this question. What if your greatest character flaw was your name? What it would be? What would your name be? If we labeled you by your great flaw, what would your name be? Hi, my name's Prideful. Hi, Prideful. Nice to meet you. My name's Gossipy. I can't wait to tell everybody who I met today. What would it be? The man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel. So God is saying to Jacob, Jacob, you used to be manipulator, but now you're a prince. Why is that important? Because it's in the deep struggles of life that God does his deepest work in our hearts. It's transforming. He wants, in the struggle, God not only wants to change the situation, more importantly, God wants to change us.